There was nothing wrong with what the president said about how he's being treated by the press worse than anybody else, including, he pointed to the Lincoln statue. And he's right about that. If you read on freedom of the press, you'll know he's right about that. Lincoln was treated mostly very, very well by the press that remained, because he shut down 200 newspapers. He shut down 200 newspapers, and they arrested journalists. His Secretary of War did, Stanton. They issued an order, and they were quite serious about it. And so, yes, he has been treated a lot worse. And you know what? And he's reacted a lot better. Again, when you look at John Kennedy, the media covered for him, they covered for his affairs, and he didn't just have an affairs. He had affairs with the wrong people. He had affairs with a mobster, with the top mobster's girlfriend. He had an affair with an East German spy, an affair with Marilyn Monroe, people who would talk. The FBI was busy trying to cover up all this stuff. He unleashed the IRS against his political opponents. I mean, and you didn't know any of that when John Kennedy was president. Lyndon Johnson was even worse in terms of his conduct. And he sicked the IRS, the FBI, and the CIA on his opponents. He even sicked the IRS on newspapers that he disagreed with as well. But he used the FBI to tap the phones of his vice president who was running for president, Hubert Humphrey. He wanted to know his real thoughts. He was going to attack him, that is Johnson, on the Vietnam War. He used the FBI, as you know, again from the book, to surveil the Democrat convention, because he chose not to run again, and to see how various groups, including Martin Luther King's phone in the hotel that was tapped, to see what his behavior was. And the media knew a lot of this, and the media reported none of it. Ben Bradley, who at the time was working for Newsweek, which also owned the Washington Post, later would move over to the Washington Post, big hero, you know, Watergate, got Nixon and so forth. He was best friends with John Kennedy, and John Kennedy would leak him information about billionaires from their IRS files. He would leak him information about other stuff. He would even help Bradley write stories. There was one instance of that. So this is what's going on. You have social activists, hardcore statists, Democrats that populate our media in numbers that they never have before. You have groupthink, no diversity in newsrooms anymore. So when the President of the United States says, I've been treated worse than even this man, Abraham Lincoln, you saw what he said, by the press. By the press, he's exactly right. So what did the press do? They proved exactly what he was saying. Here we have from the Daily Wire, PBS writer Yamiche Alcindor. This lady is a hardcore lefty. She works for NPR. And really is not a reporter. And the idea that they pretend they have any standards whatsoever is outrageous. Who has a history making false claims and has often shown her bias against the administration, responded by writing video of President Trump sitting at the feet of the Lincoln Memorial, saying, is he being treated worse than President Abraham Lincoln, who was assassinated after freeing enslaved people across America? That's not what the president said. He said treated worse by the press. It has nothing to do with the way Lincoln was treated by anybody else, or certainly has nothing to do with his assassination. You see, this is who they are. This is their mindset. It doesn't matter what the president says. Left-wing activist Brian Tyler Cohen tweeted, Trump sitting at the foot, they all sound the same, at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial, claims he's been treated worse than Lincoln, who was shot in the head and killed while in office. Left-wing CNN commentator Keith Boykin responded, Lincoln was assassinated. But that's nothing compared to Trump having to answer questions from reporters. You see what I mean? How completely out of line these fools are? Others quickly called out the misleading claims, which failed to note that Trump was specifically talking about press coverage. This is all going on while you're sleeping on the internet, just so you know. Federalist reporter Emily Yashinsky responded to Alcindor by writing, this is such a stupid hair to have to split. But he was specifically talking about his treatment from the press, not the public in general. Watch the clip. A lot of misleading tweets on this, she writes. Breitbart editor, great guy, Joel Pollack responded to left-wing CNN reporter Oliver Darcy's tweet, which would not include the context of Trump's remarks in the text of the tweet. Quote, in terms of media coverage, capitalized, you know it, and your tweet proves it. Seattle-based conservative radio host Jason Rantz responded, Trump is talking about treatment from the press. He's right. National Review senior writer Dan McLaughlin. Now, National Review can't go all in on this for Trump because that's just not where they stand. They stand on both sides. They're sort of never-Trumpers when they're not never-Trumpers. So a little schizophrenic over there. And it's demonstrated by McLaughlin's response. Quote, a little misleading since he says worse, quote, by the press, unquote. But even there, no. True, Lincoln had the New York Times like Trump has Fox News. Plus, Lincoln owned a newspaper in Illinois. But even adjusting for all that, no, that is no, Trump wasn't treated worse. Of course, he has been treated worse than Lincoln was. And, you know, there could be a lot of criticism of Abraham Lincoln from the media. Can you imagine the media today if Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States? You sent how many men into battle? You lost what battle? We had how many casualties? Don't you know how to pick a general? Don't you know how to be commander-in-chief? You could see him going, what do you mean you suspended habeas corpus because some rebels, saboteurs, cut the telegraph lines in Maryland and we lost communications for a period of time with the North, and you dared to imprison them? What do you mean you shut down newspapers, including 2 in New York, by the way, for information that was leaked to them because we're in a civil war and it might hurt the military? What do you mean you did this? What do you mean you did that? Can you imagine this media today reporting on Abraham Lincoln? Why don't you sue for peace with the South? You know, why? I think the carnage is just too much. And there was a lot of carnage. And I could go on and on. The media today is made up of knuckleheads, people who have no knowledge. They're not serious people. They're what I've called sort of the kamikaze reporters. They're thrown in there by these media executives to cause as much disruption as they possibly can. They're part of the resistance, don't you know? They've even said they're part of the resistance.